replay for their new type of presentations. But where has this decline began? Has this always been a root thing for NVIDIA? Well, just to let you know, I'm like relatively young. I'm 23. I'm talking about it from my perspective. So you might be able to see some different perspectives. You might have some more. So leave them in the comments below if you can see some more points as things have led to this. But one of the big things that I remember back in like 2017 when the GTX 1080 Ti came out, obviously legendary graphics card, awesome graphics card that everybody has really enjoyed that card. This was the announcement of it. This is freaking 8 years ago. You can see young Luke from Linus Tech Tips. Like he looks so much younger here. This was an interesting event because nowadays Luke has actually gone back into that situation and talked about how the GTX 1080 Ti was actually a pretty manipulative launch.
But if I remember correctly, they didn't tell us stuff like the price and a few other like really key things that if you published an announcement video, you would really expect to have.
Which does seem a little scummy, but not really that weird as of yet. But things do start to get a little bit worse because quickly after that whole event, it's weird seeing all these people so much younger now. But here's Tim from Hardware Unboxed, March 2018, not that long after. It is the NVIDIA GeForce Partner Program. Could be bad news for us all. So basically what the GeForce Partner Program was, because it did get destroyed, NVIDIA like completely canceled it because it was so anti-consumer and they're actually getting antitrust issues with it. Basically what this did was partner with companies, some for example like Asus, MSI, and Gigabyte, some other companies out there. Wikipedia says at least the program was regarded as an anti-consumer practice due to the fact that partnering companies were required to remove their gaming brand from all NVIDIA graphics cards. They had to take off the gaming branding. They couldn't even brand a graphics card for gaming, even though it renders goddamn graphics. It makes no sense whatsoever. So this was obviously pretty anti-competitive. Partners are allowed to work with other companies, not just NVIDIA. So everybody pretty much saw this as a pretty negative thing, just like how Tim was talking about here way back in 2018. Now this has taken new forms. I think this is still somewhat a thing, maybe just not as aggressively in your face, but the NVIDIA Partner Network now exists. Like say down here, like cloud partners, data center providers, distributors, you know, a bunch of other companies that they partner with probably push their brand a little bit. We know that a lot of companies are scared of NVIDIA because even though they partner with them, NVIDIA holds a lot of the power.
Putting pressure on your partners, you know, maintain pricing in the channel or whatever, it's part of the broader NVIDIA behavior that puts their partners in a position of constant fear.
So this doesn't look great, but the GeForce Partner Program, at least it was a W because it did end up getting canceled in May 2018 because of how bad it actually was. But you can kind of see where NVIDIA is starting to lean. They're trying to leverage their power to control the market and try to form a monopoly or something like that. Then we move to a new thing, and this is NVIDIA RTX. I know you guys probably remember back in 2018 when they changed GTX to RTX because they're pushing ray tracing. Now, this was back when presentations were still pretty good for NVIDIA. Like most of this presentation was talking about gaming and rendering ray tracing using DLSS upscaling. And as you can see, the like ratio is still pretty good on this. This was introducing ray tracing in DLSS, which does lead to a lot of problem as we see in the future. The first thing is how hard they were pushing ray tracing. Not that ray tracing is a bad thing. I think ray tracing is actually pretty cool. Literally in the game, it casts rays to basically try to simulate light, like real life light inside of a video game. So you can see like reflections and stuff from around corners or anything perspective correct. It's gonna get realistic bounce lighting. So like if you had like a red wall or something, this would be real lighting like that inside of a game. This is where ray tracing or real-time ray tracing in games started to come around. I remember back when this happened, this was the video that I remember like really stuck out to me. Jay's 2 cents covered Battlefield 5 with RTX on. Now this was a weird situation because ray tracing only launched with like one freaking game. It only had ray traced reflections at the time. And what I think was really funny is how much performance you lost by playing on it. For example here, this was without ray tracing on, he was getting 150 FPS. And then when he went on to like ultra ray tracing, he was in like the 30s, maybe 40s FPS. So not really great in terms of the performance, but ray tracing genuinely had some nice benefits. Like it looks cool, it's just extremely intensive to run. Obviously we know today and Nvidia still pushes ray tracing extremely heavy, something they want to hold over AMD because AMD is further behind in ray tracing at the moment, even though the new cards are starting to look a little bit better with the ray tracing performance. But obviously Nvidia wants to push this because they get better performance with ray tracing, the graphics can look better, although sometimes I actually think they can look worse. And that was really the big controversy with RTX when it launched. I mean, the GPUs themselves weren't very good value, and they introduced the RTX 20 series super cards, which started to look a little bit better. That was a situation with the rest of 20 series. That's where it really starts to compound a lot of those things, because when they introduced 30 series, there's a huge uplift in terms of their ray tracing performance. On the surface, 30 series looks pretty good. I mean, look at these performance numbers. The 3070 is beating a 2080 super by quite a bit. 3080 is completely gapping the 2080 Super, and these aren't using any like weird performance hacks like, you know, DLSS or frame generation like we kind of see today. Some manipulative things did start to take place because right off the bat, Nvidia did market this GPU to be able to game at 8K. 8K gaming on a 3090, which was kind of cool, I guess. But Nvidia sponsored videos for here, like Linus, they did a sponsored video with 8K gaming, and also Marquez Brownlee. Technically speaking, the 3090 could play at 8K, but at the time, TVs and stuff were the only option you ever had to run 8K at all, and those TVs were like $30,000 or something. As time has gone on, actually companies are making less and less 8K displays because it is such a pointless thing to be able to run. 4K is like almost always sharp enough at any screen size. But this is another case of Nvidia sponsoring people, trying to push something that really didn't apply to that many people, trying to control the narrative going out. It's like, oh, only the Nvidia graphics card can do 8K gaming. What was really bad with the 30 series launch was actually things like this, because Hardware Unboxed, for example, obviously very, very stable, very good reviewer, and Nvidia bans Hardware Unboxed, then backpedals. So basically, Nvidia was trying to cut off samples or any review material for Hardware Unboxed. No place is entitled to get review samples or anything like that, but it's really the way that Nvidia went and did this, because we just talked about ray tracing and everything, how intensive it is. Nvidia was trying to say that Hardware Unboxed wasn't covering ray tracing heavily enough, that ray tracing was the future of gaming, and Hardware Unboxed is like, people don't really use it. Nvidia was like, hey, you need to cover this more, and Hardware Unboxed like, no, like we covered enough, we think it's useful to a certain point, but it isn't really the only thing to be talking about with these graphics cards. It's not an advertisement when you make a review, it's a freaking review. So this was an instance of Nvidia trying to shape the narrative and literally withhold samples from Hardware Unboxed. Obviously, Hardware Unboxed is based, they stand on business, and they didn't like get scared of this. Other people who weren't as confident in their kind of content maybe would have bent the knee to Nvidia and allowed them to shove it up the ass.
But if they want to play dirty and pull the crap they played in this email, they can just bugger off. We do not need them.
Hardware Unboxed like, no, if you don't want to send us samples, if you don't want to work with us because we're not fitting your editorial direction, we're just not going to work with you. And this also led to people like Linus also responded to the Hardware Unboxed situation, and really this didn't look good for Nvidia. This was a huge PR disaster, and eventually Nvidia started working with Hardware Unboxed again, just being way less pushy, at least from what it seemed.
Try changing editorial direction with us, of all of the outlets, made us talk to other media outlets to learn about their experience of it. And we'll have some of that later in the week as well.
But 30 series was a good generation of graphics cards, but I'm gonna show you something that probably is gonna bring nightmares to you. It's gonna be PTSD when you see this image. Do you see that shit? Mining. Wait, let me scare you again. Boom. Ready for it? Boom! Another one. Crypto mining was a curse of the 30 series graphics card generation. Also a curse for AMD's graphics cards at the time as well. Crypto miners are probably to blame for the graphics chip shortage, because at the time there was a huge boom in crypto, which I don't know who really actually uses crypto, to be honest. They wanted to take the opportunity to cash in. That also was at a time when everybody is home for COVID. People actually wanted computers, so there's already a high demand for computer parts like graphics cards and that kind of stuff, and then crypto miners took this to a whole new level. So here is the price of Ethereum, which is a crypto coin, who gives a shit, and then that shoots up to the moon, and as you can see, right along with it, GPU prices are also shooting to the moon. This is comparing the MSRPs of some of these graphics cards. So here's the Nvidia ones, 127, 149%, 171%. As we see over time, eventually there was a peak where NVIDIA graphics cards were 304% of the MSRP. The only reason why this kind of worked out is because people had stimulus checks and they were just kind of spending some money on this kind of stuff, but this started to build some kind of resentment for it. And this has led to PTSD even to this day, where a bunch of people are still checking graphics cards at launch and everything to see how their pricing changes over time, because we don't want to be in the same situation. And this has even created a culture, because these crypto mining shortages were honestly, I think, the first time that graphics cards were legitimately scalped and resold to people at a much higher price. Today, we still see a lot of scalping going on with graphics cards. I remember when the 50 series launched, you couldn't get like a 5090 or anything like that, and people were already trying to sell them at like 2 times, 3 times, 4 times the MSRP. There's even been anti-scalping movements where some people will go on there and they'll actually try to scalp out bots. So a bot will try to buy a graphics card on the market, selling that bot a piece of paper and labeling it a 5090 or something like that, so that people would get fooled, or the bots would get fooled into buying it and get a piece of paper and be completely scammed and then not allow them to return it. It's actually caused trauma in the PC gaming community that there's now an anti-scalping movement. You could say that NVIDIA, AMD, specifically talking about NVIDIA here, but they're not really liable for what has happened here, because people just wanted graphics cards and they literally couldn't make enough because the capacity, the manufacturing capacity was actually limited at the time because of COVID. But NVIDIA also did some things that seemed pretty scummy in order to, what I think, to leverage the situation to make as much money as possible, while at the same time trying to virtue signal that they're on gamers' sides. For example here, NVIDIA made the RTX 3080 Ti. This was a graphics card that was stupid. Like, the original 3080 was a $700 graphics card, and the 3080 Ti was a like $1,200 graphics card. It really was only a little bit faster than a normal 3080. And it was clearly NVIDIA trying to jack up the price to take advantage of people buying these graphics cards at much higher prices and getting scalped models as well. Then NVIDIA also, actually a little bit before the 3080 Ti did launch, they announced these LHR graphics card. It stands for low hash rate graphics cards, which are basically ones that were made in the factory to not be able to take advantage of crypto mining, or that they're very bad at mining. This seemed like something that would be very pro-consumer, that NVIDIA was looking at this and wanted to basically get graphics cards in the hands of gamers instead of in the hands of crypto miners. But at the same time though, a lot of people found many ways to bypass the low hash rate limitation and just get these graphics cards anyway. So this kind of just came off as this PR thing where NVIDIA is trying to virtue signal that they're trying to get graphics cards to gamers. At least that's what it felt like. Now, I'm sure some people did buy these cards and appreciated they existed, but I don't think this was as effective as NVIDIA maybe would have tried to make it out to be. This did obviously affect NVIDIA. Their stock price went up a lot in this time. We're gonna ignore the right side here because AI kind of went crazy and now NVIDIA is worth trillions of dollars. But if we look just back at the beginning of 2020, when this crypto mining shortage started, to this point here in like 2022, they doubled in value.